Oh, no, you're
enjoyed and listening to all of the sessions as much as we have. Our first speaker right now is going to be Unsuck
Well, they're not silly.
With Denver Public Schools. Unsuck is currently a full-time partner. I said my first sentence again. Let's try again. What's thrilling about Unsuck is that her journey in education includes culturally and socioeconomically diverse communities in Colorado, California, and Idaho, and also through teaching K through 5. With extensive experience both in the classroom as well as leading professional development, supporting educators from K through 12 and higher education, she's become a passionate leader in challenging and established structures to raise the achievement of all students. Without further ado, let's welcome Unsuck.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. So I want to acknowledge all the great thinking and conversations that we've engaged in today. And so want to just thank you for being here and invite you to have, a light topic on power, privilege, and challenging our beliefs. No big deal. But in order to start, I want to share a little bit about myself so you understand what drives me and motivates me. And so this is my world, all wrapped up into one. So that's my husband, who also happens to be sitting down here, and highly instrumental in me actually biting the bullet and standing up here, because I kind of didn't want to. But he continually shares and encourages me and says I have a story to tell. And I'll get into that a little bit later. And that's our son, Colton. And I think the third piece of our world is motorcycles. We have a few of them. So just kind of wanted to share that the reason I'm up here today is because of the journey that I've had with my husband and our son, what we've learned. We're both educators. We've been in education for, this will be my 16th year. I think this is your 17th year. And knowing that we had all of these students in our class and what we've learned in the last 6 years of having a beautiful son who doesn't look white, and what we've learned through that journey as well. And so I want to start with a quote and why I was so scared to be here. Marianne Williamson says that our greatest fear is not actually that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And so when the call for proposals came out, I wrote the proposal, and I submitted it, hit, haha, whatever. And then all of a sudden, Meg Zimmerman sends me this email and says, "Yay, we'd love to have you." And I looked at my husband and I said, I've fought for years, being angry that nobody's listening. What if they actually listen? And he said, they should. And I bet, but what if they actually listen? And so I'm being vulnerable with you, letting you know that this is hard for me. I've presented at national conferences, I presented at Harvard, and standing in front of you, in front of colleagues that I know who are insanely talented, puts me into a place that is more uncomfortable than any of those other experiences that I've had. But I do that because all of you are amazing. Teachers are powerful. And I have to say, when I was in the classroom, I used to introduce myself places as well, I'm just a teacher. So when I heard the statement, teachers are powerful, I would roll my eyes. Sure, I'm surrounded by poster paint and magnetic tiles and Unifix cubes. Go me. But I want to invite you to close your eyes. I want you to think about your favorite teacher, a teacher that you had. And I want you to think about, what do you see? What's around you? Who's around you? What are you doing? What do you hear? It's an elementary classroom, maybe it's even, what do you smell? Now open your eyes. How do you feel thinking about that teacher in that classroom? And I'm looking around and I'm seeing some deep, thoughtful looks. I see smiles. That's power. Think about how long it's been since you've been in that person's classroom. That's power. And today I want to invite all of us to step into a space to embrace that power and to become transformational leaders for education. So, in order to embrace that transformational power, though, we need to talk about a different kind of power, one that is far less sexy. When we talk about societies have systems, and within that system is power, people who have access and control of those systems. Now, I heard over and over again today a level of inspiration and a level of frustration of what can we really do. And I'm here to say that we, as educators, the fact that we are in this room means that we have power, we have influence. And so what can we do then to use that power to create positive change? What are we going to do? Now here's the thing. In our country, most of you are from DPS, in our own district, we predictably and disproportionately can tell you who is at the bottom of our academic achievement, who is going to be disproportionately identified for special ed, who's going to end up suspended, who's going to end up in harsher and more frequent disciplinary actions. So, given those facts that we really can't refute given the stark numbers that we have, and this is despite socioeconomic status, right? I mean, we have data that shows our wealthiest kids of color are still being outperformed by our poorest white kids. And so given this data, we have two choices. We either believe that our kids of color are genetically somehow predisposed to be academically and intellectually inferior, that for whatever reason that they're just more prone to behavioral issues, or we accept and acknowledge that there's a systemic issue. There's a system-wide issue. Now here's the deal. We've been around for a while. This is not a new topic. We've been talking about academic opportunity gaps for over 20 years, to the point where I've been in trainings where I bring this up and somebody inevitably goes, "This again? Seriously, we've talked about it for 20 years. Why are we still talking about it? Why isn't it getting better?" So I want to introduce this concept of Ronald Heifetz's work on adaptive versus technical challenges. And so even though this is not supposed to be a teaching talk, it's the crux of what this concept is. So Ronald Heifetz talks about two different types of challenges. So a technical challenge versus an adaptive challenge. A technical challenge is a more simple problem. We have a problem, linear solution. And so an easy example of that is my car breaks down, I take it to the shop, car gets fixed. So that's this idea here of disequilibrium. So our level of discomfort, my car breaks down, I freak out, somebody helps me, my discomfort goes down over time. The problem is when we talk about closing the opportunity gap, we tend to try to address it as a technical challenge, when really we're talking about an adaptive one. An adaptive one requires that we challenge and reconsider our beliefs, as well as change and learn new skills. And so an example, an analogy would be cooking an egg. So I watched far too much Food Network to the point where my son thinks that Cupcake Wars is an actual competitive event. So Food Network says that cooking an egg is actually one of the hardest things to do well. So I have an egg, I want to cook it, but if I throw it on a cold burner in a cold pan, it never cooks. So that's this idea of work avoidance. If I don't turn up the heat, nothing happens, nothing changes. Well, all right. Alton Brown says I have to turn up the heat. Done. I tend to be somebody who is reactive. So you tell me to turn up the heat? Okay, I'll turn up the heat. Turn that burner up, let that pan get screeching hot. Still have a disaster. The problem is, I turn up the heat too high. I peek out, I pull the pan off, still didn't produce enough heat to cook the egg properly. So what I'm proposing today and inviting us to think about is how do we turn up the heat enough, make ourselves uncomfortable enough to step into a space where we are willing to examine not just our actions, but our beliefs. That's uncomfortable. That's really uncomfortable. Because I have so many DPS colleagues here, how many of you are familiar with the belief cycle from the Aspire training? Okay, good. So in Aspire, one of my favorite trainings, we introduced this idea of the belief cycle. So our beliefs drive our behaviors produce results. Makes sense, right? Especially in elementary school, I have a whole lot of parents at the beginning of the year who believe their kids are highly gifted. You know who I'm talking about, right? So then, there are some behaviors that may or may not affirm that, right? So, as teachers, we want to acknowledge that all kids have gifts, right? And sometimes those behaviors may or may not result in that affirmation. But from a parent view, now that we are parents, yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to hold on to these results to affirm that belief. The thing is, in education, we are really, really good at technical fixes. We're really good at changing our behaviors. Oh, we have an opportunity gap? Sweet. I'll change up my curriculum. I will move the way my classroom is arranged. I will put better, more diverse books in my library. I will change the words in my word wall. I'll change my CLO. And yet our results are the same. Because what we're not fantastic at is taking that step back to questioning our beliefs that we may or may not know we even have because of the influences of centuries of laws and policies and media influences. I'm not talking about intent. There is no way that I'm saying or would even remotely believe that any teacher wakes up in the morning and goes, all right, well, who can I marginalize today? Right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the misalignment between intent and impact. And why do we continue to have these results that we don't want? And what is it going to take then for us to take a step back and evaluate what beliefs might we be holding on to that are driving our behaviors and reproducing the same results year after year? And how do we encourage each other and help each other to uncover times when those beliefs might come up that we aren't even aware of? That's hard. I can't tell you how many tears I've seen over the years as teachers talk about their craft and the kids and who they serve. I'm not talking about how much you care about your students. I'm talking about unintentionally, what have we been taught? What are we continuing to do? What status quo do we continue to perpetuate by not challenging our own beliefs? So our charge, our work, doesn't end when we leave here today. It doesn't end when this convening ends tomorrow. Our charge continues and it starts over every day. And it starts with ourselves, each and every day. Thank you. Can I just do that stuff there? Is it going to be another? Or you can do it. I just thought it would be that's yours. Okay.